So welcome everybody to another episode of the Virtual Learning Hour. My name is Frankie. We have a special guest today, Patrick Kremer. He is a staff cloud solutions architect working with VMware VMC on AWS. I looked this up on Patrick's profile, on his vExpert profile. Yeah, VCIX, I didn't even know that. VCP, and here's his Twitter handle, his blog, and his GitHub page. And I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. And yeah, I met Patrick asking questions on the vExpert Slack. He showed me what he's going to do. I took a look out on YouTube, and it seemed it was just perfect timing. We're currently at work. We're performing a POC on something, and this fits right into it. All right. So without further ado, let me hand this off and stop sharing my screen. All right. So let me make you a prisoner.
Here we go. Hey everybody, Patrick Kremer. As Frankie said, I'm a staff cloud solutions architect with VMware. It has been 6 years this month since I started working at VMware. I've been doing VMware stuff professionally since the 3.0 days back in 2006. Most of my career I've been a sysadmin. I have very limited programming background, which I get into in this presentation. And today I'm a specialist. I only sell VMware Cloud on AWS for VMware as a pre-sales solution architect. So we're talking about modernizing your skills. I've been on a modernization journey over the past year, trying to sort of up-level my skills to fit into the cloud world. How many out there have installed Windows 95 from 13 floppies? I know I have. And I can't tell you how much of my life was wasted staring at that Norton Ghost screen cloning physical servers and desktops. That's how we used to do it. We don't do it that way now because it's an outmoded method of installing and cloning. Now we use virtualization. We make a template. We clone from template and build future instances of virtual machines that way. But even now, that model is starting down the path of obsolescence. Let's talk a little bit about my career. Back in the beginning, when dinosaurs roamed the earth 20 plus years ago, I didn't go to school to be a developer. My degree is actually in usability of all things. And very early in my career, the early 2000s, I spent a little bit of time throwing like Visual Basic front ends, little UIs on top of Access databases. There wasn't a whole lot to it. I do have some SQL background, and that helps in this cloud native world, but I'm not really a programmer. Since 2006, it was all systems administration, all VMs, all 3-tier apps all the time. Virtualizing, building VMs, helping the application owners run their application. And when virtualization came along, it was really the exact same work as physicals. It was just an easier way to do it. I don't have to install from floppies. I don't have to ghost the machines anymore. I have templates. So it's just an easier way to do it. And back then, programming was scripting. If you've managed any vSphere environment of any size for any amount of time, you will amass a bunch of PowerCLI scripts. So I dug into my PowerCLI script folder, and I found 440 scripts that I've amassed over 15 years. And they're mostly 10 and 20 liners of Googled code, right? You find something that does close to what you need, and you change a line or two and try and get it to work. This particular screenshot is a shaming script. It was to catch people who deployed VMs and didn't update the notes section with the owner information. So I have tons of those 10, 20, 30 line scripts that I cobbled together from what I could find on the internet. 2013 rolls around, VMware launches NSX. And just like when I did physical to virtual stuff, it was the same networking that I already knew. It was just a different way to do it. So it wasn't that big of a leap. But now here we are in 2020, and there's developer words, microservices and Kubernetes and GitHub and Docker and containers. And it's not like learning NSX. It's not like when we went from physical to virtual. It's a whole new profession. And that's really what makes it so difficult and so challenging, and you don't even know where to start. It's very hard coming out of sysadmin background, jumping into this cloud native world. And looking at what you have to learn doesn't really help. So I don't know if anybody has seen this particular slide, but this is a zoom in on just part of the cloud native landscape from CNCF. All this stuff that's out there, different ways to do messaging and databases and scheduling and orchestrators. And you look at this and you think, how will I ever learn it? Now, here's the full view. This is the whole landscape as it sits today from CNCF. I don't know what to do with that. I had no idea what to do with that. How can I even begin as a sysadmin to learn that? And I'm terrible at learning things just to learn them. I can't really focus. I need a project. And what I started with is VEBA, the VMware Event Broker. It's an event-driven automation product for vSphere. It's open source, and it uses Kubernetes, which I knew not a thing about when I started down this path, but VEBA let me learn Kubernetes in a context of something that I'm very familiar with, which is vCenter. So take a look at what vCenter does today. Your on-prem vCenter that you're running today. When things happen in Virtual Center, an HA event happens, or a data store gets full, or you turn a VM on or off, or you even log into the UI, an event fires. And you can react to those events with the same 3 alarm actions that you've had since like the beginning of time. You can send an email, you can send an SNMP trap, or you can run a command. And in the product line that I sell, VMC and AWS, you don't even have access to that area. You can't send an email, you can't send a trap, you can't do any of that. You're locked out of that area of the vCenter UI. So what VEBA does, this open source Fling that we're working on here, is it monitors the event stream. It monitors all the events that fire on a vCenter, and you can react to them programmatically. You can write your own function, or you can use existing functions that are already baked into the product. Here's a couple examples. As somebody who has administered huge environments, 300, 400, 500, 600 hosts, the one on the left, maintenance mode alarms, very important to me, right? So you're going to patch a cluster, you pop a host in the maintenance mode, you push the patches, the host reboots, and what do you get? A bunch of alarms saying, hey, the host is disconnected from vCenter. So I know I rebooted it. I don't need to see those alarms 400 or 500 times across all the hosts that I'm patching. So what this maintenance mode alarm VEBA script does is anytime you pop a host in the maintenance mode, it shuts off alarm actions. When you bring it out of maintenance mode, it turns on alarm actions. Very simple, and yet seriously cuts down the signal to noise ratio when you're an administrator. So I love that particular one. This one, the HA event notification, was actually contributed by a customer. And what that does is anytime there's an HA event, that HA event gets intercepted by VEBA, and it will send you an email with the list of all the virtual machines that were restarted by HA and when they were restarted. And this screen grab came out of my home lab, and I actually got it with this nifty command. This is a fun one, this vsish command. If you don't know it already, it's a way to force a purple screen of death on a host. So it's really fun to use it for either screenshots, or it's fun to really mess with somebody, to SSH to a host behind their back and crash it on them. Probably on a test host. I wouldn't do it in prod, but it's really fun to mess with somebody. Other VEBA functions that are built out of the box, you can tag a VM based on a vCenter event. Maybe you want to tag them when they're powered on or powered off, or maybe you have a particularly sensitive VM and you want to track any change that's made to it. You want to know who did it and what they did. You want to log that to a Slack channel, or maybe a disk alarm fires and you want PagerDuty to be notified. All that stuff is available out of the box in VEBA. So how did I get into this in the first place? Back in 2019, so like I said, VMC can't send normal vCenter alarms. The customer doesn't have access to that area virtual center. And I had a customer that wanted to do it. And I sent some messages in Slack. I'm like, how can I do this? And one of the product managers said, hey, there's this new open source project, this Fling called VEBA, and it might help. Okay, so I took a look, and it's just, it's an OVA. I can deploy an OVA. I download it, deploy the OVA, and I go read the README. And step one is clone repo. And I'm like, what? Like, well, what's a repo? And it has these Git commands, and I'd heard of Git. Like, I know it has something to do with source code. No clue how to use it. And then this next thing, step two, update, stack, dot. And I didn't even know how to pronounce that back then. What's a YAML? Stack, that's YML. It's a configuration file. I know that now. An update, data store config JSON. I'd heard of JSON. I'd never worked with JSON. So I'm like, what have I gotten myself into? And I took a look at this stack.yaml file, and I'm like, okay, so it's just a config file. This isn't too bad. And then the documentation says, oh, and you need Docker too. Docker, okay. So I'm in way over my head. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna SSH to this box. I know Linux reasonably well, and I'll just poke around. And I see this. Bunch of containerd and fwatchdog and kworker, and I'm thinking, where's my Apache? Where's Nginx? Where's MySQL? Where's the stuff that I understand? Well, it's not there. So November 26, 2019, I send back a message and I say, VEBA is a developer's tool. No, I can't use this. And the next day, William Lamb, who I'm sure every single one of you knows of from his extensive community work and blogging, sends me a message back and goes, no, it's really targeted at virtual infrastructure admins. So I thought, okay, so why don't I understand how to do this? So we were right around reInvent time, and William says, hey, I'll be at reInvent next week. You want to sit down and talk about it? I'm going to convince you that I'm right. So I said, okay, we'll sit down. And I want you to just remember this timeline for a minute. So we met on December 5th. I found our messages in Slack. We met at 11 a.m. on December 5th, 2019. And he spent an hour, and he convinced me of the error of my ways. And he convinced me, okay, I can probably learn this, so I'm going to try it. So again, we were in Vegas, so I didn't look at any of this stuff Thursday or Friday, and I traveled home Friday. So I didn't really look at this again until December 8th. So keep December 8th in your head for a minute, and we'll come back to it. So I decided, all right, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to blog about it. And I'm going to blog every single thing that I did. I'm just going to write it all down, every single challenge that I came up with. Coming from a sysadmin background, I'm just going to write it down. And the first thing I had to figure out is, what is GitHub? And GitHub is, Git is open source version control. I knew it was version control. It's version control for source code. GitHub is a cloud service built around Git. It's a place where developers can work on the same project simultaneously. And GitHub boasts over 100 million Git repository. What's a repository? Well, a repository or repo, it's just a receptacle for code. It's basically a project. You put all your files in a project, and you can collaborate on those files with programmers all over the world. So I jump on in this VEBA project, and there's 7 really hardcore programmers. They all know what they're doing. They all know Git and GitHub, and they've all written code professionally. And then there's me. So you want to talk about some imposter syndrome? Like, I do not belong here. That is how I felt, 100%. This is a screenshot of GitHub. So GitHub tracks how many contributions, so how much code that you have pushed into open source over the prior year. So you look at all these folks who are on the project, 88, 242. Every light green square, you pushed at least one commit. You committed code at least once. The darker the green, the more code you did that day. 88, 242, 413 contributions in the last year, right? And then there's me, big blank, not a thing. But what I learned is people who are working on an open source project, they want it to succeed. They want to help every single one of these people, even though they are, you know, real actual developers and they really write real code. They've all helped me. They've all helped me internally on our internal Slack. They've helped customers in public Slack. They've troubleshot issues with customers. Everybody wants to help. So it really is, it's welcoming. You don't have to be too freaked out about it. People want to help. You just have to ask. And they taught me a couple things, and just using a couple of the right tools and this jumbled mess on this box suddenly makes sense. If you just use, you know, the correct command, this kubectl get pods -a, show me all the Kubernetes pods running here, and you see, okay, my containers are running code, containers are organized into pods, and pods are organized into namespaces. Now suddenly there's order to what's going on. And the second most important tool was logs. So this kubectl logs command, it's basically the same. You can tail logs the same way you can do in any Linux machine, right? Anybody who's troubleshot Linux, you've tailed a log file trying to watch for issues. Same stuff, right? So you can look at code, look at logs that are in a pod and try to figure out what's working and what's not. So I asked you to remember the 8th, right? I didn't fly back from Vegas until December 6th, and I didn't really look at this until Sunday the 8th. And look at the date on this commit, December 10th. So I went from knowing not a thing and understanding nothing to making my first change to an open source project, and it was like in 2 days. And all I did, I literally changed one character, right? It said read debuggy, and I deleted the E, and I made that change. One character. But I did it, right? I made that change. And it's not some sort of mysterious, impossible to understand thing for a sysadmin. Anybody can learn to use Git and make, at a minimum, documentation changes, right? If you've been a system administrator for any period of time, you can learn this stuff. I promise you, you can learn this stuff. So I fixed more documentation. So 6 days later, I fixed 7 bugs in the documentation and committed them December 6th. And so I went through deploying VEBA and learning more about VEBA, and I wrote about it. And I did more and tried to get more to work. And I asked questions and I wrote about it. And eventually it grew into like a 12-part blog series. And I wrote it all, again, from the perspective of a system administrator who knew absolutely nothing about it, because that is what I was. I knew nothing starting. And so the blog covers everything from installation to what it should look like and what it looks like if there's an error condition. Troubleshooting, right? I showed you kubectl get pods -a. This shows you all the pods. It goes through Git. I had no idea how to install or use Git, no idea what I was doing. So I went through that, some basic Git commands on how to put code into Git and make commits and sign your code, all the stuff that I needed to be able to contribute to this open source project. I blogged about the whole thing. And as I did more and committed more, my contributions grew. So it went from not only documentation, right? I actually made changes to code. I did some Power CLI. I changed a Power CLI function. I thought, okay, I've spent most of my career, I grabbed 440 scripts off the internet and I changed them to suit my purpose. And here's a Power CLI script in this VEBA, and I'm going to change it. I'm going to change it to do what I want. And I did the same thing that I've been doing for 15 years. I looked at the code, I Googled to try to find an example of what I wanted to do, and I jammed it in there and just kept rerunning it until I got it to work. You know, the same stuff that I've been doing forever. It's the same. It's not some sort of brand new thing. It's just, again, a slightly different way of doing the same stuff that I've been doing. And then suddenly my contributions grew. So this is the prior year up until just the other day. You know, it's a little better. It's not blank anymore. So I've definitely been doing work over the last year, contributing to open source, this VEBA project. And this popped up a month or two ago. I just thought it was really cool. GitHub has this Arctic code vault. They wanted to preserve code in the event of, the loss of all of humanity or the loss of internet or servers or whatever. It's like a preservation thing. So code that I wrote now sits in a vault under permafrost somewhere in the Arctic. I just thought that was a cool thing. So doing this has opened up internal prospects for me too, the ability to contribute and grow my career internally. So I had my first contribution to VMware's private GitHub repo. This is internal only to VMware in September, with pretty extensive contributions since. So this is me actually working on a Fling. Like, I am a core developer now in Python on a VMware Fling. And even saying it out loud now seems kind of crazy to me. December of last year, if you had said, hey, you're going to be writing code on a Fling, I'd have been like, you're nuts. I can't do that. But there was a base of code to do some of what we wanted already. And I had customers that continued to show a need for what we wanted to write. And I'm like, well, maybe I can read it, and maybe I can look at this Python and I can learn a little. So I started taking a Python course, and I read a little code, and I took a little bit of class, and I tried to write a little Python, and piece by piece, I learned just a little bit more and a little bit more, and just, incremental knowledge. And I added some code, and I changed more code and read a little and wrote a little, and rinse, repeat. And I just kept doing it. And opportunities to grow my skill also presented themselves outside of work too. So due to COVID-19, vote by mail utilization for the previous election, presidential election, exploded. And the county clerk publishes a daily report of the status of who voted by mail, who asked for a ballot, when they requested it, and a status code. And I'm pretty heavily involved in my local political party. And what political parties do during an election for vote by mail, it's something called a ballot chase. So they will try to call voters who are strongly on their side of the political spectrum. Anybody who has requested a ballot but hasn't sent it back, they'll start calling and be like, hey, did you turn your ballot in? It's trying to ensure that you get all of your voters out to the polls. So the county clerk publishes this data in a PDF format, which is totally and completely worthless, right? I can't hand a PDF to a bunch of volunteers and say, hey, go through this PDF, right? It was hundreds of pages worth of PDF, and it's not a consumable format. And I started thinking, well, I've been doing this stuff with Python. Maybe Python can help me. And just like when I was working on the internal Fling, I Googled, and sure enough, hey, there's a PDF module in Python called PyPDF, and it can read PDFs. So I saw some code samples, I manipulated it a little bit, and then I was able to read the file. And then I was able to snag a row by row of data out of the file, and I was able to manipulate the strings that were in there. And for 2 weeks, I worked a lot, spent a lot of time, evenings, trying to get this to go. And the first iteration, all it could do would be spit out the text that it found. And then the next one was able to parse out rows, which was a lot of fun considering there weren't any field delimiters in this file. And it grew, and I just added a little more functionality every day. And in the final version, it was able to pull the PDF down live from the website where it was posted, ingest it, spit it out into a CSV. It was searching a separate data file for phone numbers to match that up so that we could load it into a dialer so that our volunteers could actually call and get the vote out. And, again, I couldn't have done this. I wouldn't have been able to do that even 3 months prior without having worked on VEBA. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to work on the Fling. And without the Fling, I wouldn't have learned Python, and then I wouldn't be able to do this. And I was able to bring a lot of what I learned on this political project back to work. I've used like 4 of the techniques that I learned in this political Python thing back in the Fling. So it all kind of circles around. I want to talk a little bit about what's really inside VEBA. So this is a YAML template for the host maintenance alarms function. So the same one that disables alarm functions when you put a host into maintenance mode. This is really the guts. This is the core of how PowerShell calls that script. And you can just see it's an xargs command, and it's calling pwsh, the Linux PowerShell executable, and it's calling a ps1, a PowerShell script. And a bug report came in, and the symptom of the bug was any time that there's a space and a hyphen in the name of a cluster in vCenter, the function bombs out. And again, in the end, what's happening here? PowerShell is invoking a script, and the names of the clusters and everything in there is being passed as an argument. Well, PowerShell uses hyphens to indicate arguments. So when the hyphen was coming through, it was being interpreted as an argument and not text. So it bombed out. So what's the fix? Well, it's playing around with xargs. Well, how old is xargs? I learned xargs, in the late 90s. It's been around for 40 years. xargs has been around for 40 years. The earliest that I could find reference to it was a Unix System 3 manual from June of 1980. So the point of all this is your existing skills can be put to good use, right? I've known about xargs for 20 years, and I was able to use that knowledge to fix a problem in this modern app. And I was able to make this change. So if you decide you're going to go ahead and deploy VEBA, you're going to deploy an OVA. And when you get to the OVA, you're going to have this little enable SSH checkbox. And I decided I wanted it because I was deploying a ton of VEBA, and I got tired of manually enabling SSH. I wanted it turned on. So this is mine. This is my actual code. Let's take a look at what I actually did. What change did I really make? So this first part, this if enable SSH is true, it's just bash, right? So if you've been around Linux at all, you've run bash scripts. It's just simple bash. It's 2 Linux commands, system control enable SSHD and system control start. It's stuff that you've probably typed as a sysadmin already. The second part, this variable enable SSH, do I really know off the top of my head what all these commands do? Not really. I didn't type this out. I copied it from the row above and just got it to work. And then the bottom part, it's just XML, right? And again, I didn't write this. I just copied it from another checkbox that was already in there. So it's all the same stuff that I've been doing all along, finding some other code out there that does what I want and modifying it to my needs. So there is a lot of sort of really hardcore programming that happens on a project, but you don't have to be at that level in order to contribute. There's all sorts of stuff that your existing skills can be put to good use on, particularly in this VEBA project, but on any open source project. So looking back at what happened, how this has impacted me, let's look. December of 2019, I'd never contributed to open source ever. And now I have over 100 commits in open source projects. Before I was a sysadmin with PowerShell skills, and now I actually, I can write in Python. I'm not a Python wizard or guru or anything, but I can get along and I can get it to do what I need it to do. A year ago, I never fathomed that I'd be a co-author on a Fling. That's crazy. But I'm a core developer on a new Python-based Fling. A year ago, invoking an API, are you kidding me? That's hilarious. I don't know how to do that. That's not a thing that I can do. And yet here I am in a Fling now, a year later, invoking APIs through Python. Last year, I applied to CTO Ambassadors. It's an internal program at VMware. It helps you grow your career. It helps you impact VMware by getting feedback from the community, feedback from customers, and getting it into development faster. So it's to sort of shorten the feedback loop. We do a bunch of other things. I did not succeed, but I succeeded just the other day. I was admitted this year. And it's primarily on the strength of all the stuff that I learned with VEBA and what that enabled me to contribute later. And then I was invited to be a VMware code coach too, as well, because of this journey that I took. So really, that one little meeting, William Lamb decided to spend 1 hour with me to convince me you really should learn this. And it set off this whole crazy year of 2020 of some significant career growth and skills modernization beyond my sysadmin skills. So William gave me a push, and this is your push, right? I'm giving you a push here in this talk. If I've inspired you to come take a look, I'd invite you to go download VEBA. Check it out. We'd love for you to join the community, test it out, try it out, see what you can do with it. If it doesn't really fit what you want, that's cool. Go find something. Go find an open source project that you're interested in and do something. Contribute some documentation, figure it out, play around, modernize your skills. We just this week released VEBA 0.5. We added Knative as an event process. Michael Gash, our Go programmer extraordinaire, one of the main developers on this product, added at least once event delivery. So even if vCenter crashes, you don't miss events. The event router can actually pick up events that were lost during a crash. That's pretty slick. Bunch of new functions. There's Helm now, so you don't have to do the OVA. You can actually deploy the event router straight into a Kubernetes environment. A lot of really cool stuff in 0.5.0, and I invite you to check it out. That is all I have, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Yeah, super interesting stuff. Yeah, let me go ahead and everybody can unmute themselves if they want. Yeah, and feel free, unmute and ask questions. Yeah, no, it's super interesting, and it's nice to see people, like when you bring up William Lamb, right? Virtually ghetto guy. It's, I remember being at VMworld, and there were Meet the Expert, there was a section.
Yeah.
So I walked over, I had 0 questions for this guy. And I didn't even sign up to be there. But they let me in because there was nobody at the table.
Okay.
I walked in, I sat with him, I was like, hey, how you going? And I was like, you're the virtually ghetto guy. I was like, I don't even know your real name. And so introduced myself, and then some other guy, then people started showing up. And it was so funny. There was another guy that came, big old smile on his face, and it was crazy just to see how like a celebrity he was, right? And then they started talking tech, and it was just fun to see, and just to listen to other people, and like it's a feeling of like you're one of us kind of thing, where it's attainable. You start, when people start talking about Kubernetes, you start talking about all these things in Python. It's like, oh man, I wish I knew. But yeah, no, this is perfect. It's a great way just to get in there and get started.
Absolutely,
everyone
can learn it.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
My kids are playing in the background.
Nice.
It's lunchtime for them. Yeah, no. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free. So somebody did ask, Henry, he did ask if you can share the slides. He provided his email. So
I will send that to you, Frankie, and you can send it out to everybody. I've done many versions of this. I'll post the latest version as soon as we're done. Prior versions of this are also up on my website. So yeah, I'll post that after.
Okay. All right. So while we're waiting, we have 25 participants. I did take
Frankie,
note.
I want to hear about what it was like for you to present to New York VMUG.
So that was fun. Yeah. So actually, Ivan is here as well. He's one of the VMUG leaders from up in NYC. So yeah, no, it was super fun. a little nerve wracking, but it was very nice to talk and just see normal people, and just to you feel it feels different. Like, well, it feels weird when people are asking you questions, and there's people like in the virtual audience here, and like they're waiting for you to answer. It's weird. It's weird, but it was fun though. You know, it's a little adrenaline push, because you're like, oh man, that was really fun afterwards. Yeah. And I told him I was super nervous, and of course he called me first. Of course he did. Oh man, yeah. So, but it was fun. It was great. Yeah, I can't wait to do it again. Honestly, I'm working on seeing Patrick here, looking at this presentation, and the other ones that he's done for VMware Code. You know, it's good stuff. I'm working on presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Patrick, I missed some of your presentation. Thank you so much for coming out. Have you done any specific work around public speaking? Is there any specific skill sets or classes you've taken to increase your public speaking skills?
I did. My manager, probably a year and a half into the role, he sent me to Dale Carnegie, and I probably the best training money that's ever been spent on my behalf at VMware. I was that, grip the lectern, white knuckled, scared to death, hide behind the podium. I hated it. Public speaking. And, they beat that right out of you in the Dale Carnegie class. It's worth it. And, being able to do that has, again, changed my career. Being able to speak in front of a VMUG, being able to speak in front of a group of customers, right? I never had a problem going into a customer and sitting at a table and talking to 3 people, but as your career grows, you end up in front of a much larger audience. And the tipping point, I don't know quite where it was, maybe somewhere around 10 or 12, I'd start to panic, right? But Dale Carnegie stamped that right out. I mean, I still get butterflies just like everybody else does, but that just death grip on the podium stuff is gone. So
cool. Thank you for that. Anybody else attending today, if they had specific training or classes, any work around public speaking that you found valuable?
I wouldn't say I've taken courses, but I've kind of just tried to jump right into it. So, I think a lot of people have that kind of fear of just, public speaking in general. So I think it's just a matter of, if you find something that you're comfortable with, know your comfort zone and just jump into it. So, the VMUG was one of the ways that I was able to do that. I love talking to people, in kind of a VMUG setting, but I wasn't really standing up in front of them and doing the same thing and answering questions. It is a little bit of a different dynamic, but definitely very enjoyable. And you get to start seeing, I guess, the fruits of your labor as you start seeing how people reach out to you instead. And it becomes a little bit easier. Not everybody is a stranger at that point. It starts feeling more of a community than just saying, you're going to have stage fright. So it's kind of my take on it, at least.
Awesome. Thanks for kicking it.
Of course.
Brian, this is Joe Fair, and I'm also with VMware. And I went through some training through Mandel that was really good. I really, really enjoyed that. Like Patrick said, some of the best training dollars that the company has spent on me by far. He and I are much similar in where we came from a fear of public speaking. I swear I've left fingerprints in some wooden lecterns in the past. I'm absolutely just terrified by it. But through the practice, through the training, and like Ivan said, just being able to see it as a community and know that, it's a welcoming environment in most cases, and everybody's there to hear what you have to say, and they all feel the same way. But Mandel was also a good one.
Did you take that as part of the AAC course by chance? I just finished the Advanced Architect course via VMware.
No, I didn't. This was actually completely independent. Yeah,
Okay.
it was. I took it probably 4 years ago. It's just kind of as an independent I don't know, we get the ability to select some of our training that's outside of our current role. And that was the training that I selected at the time. So it was just kind of independent.
Good choice. Yeah, they did that. Mandel is still in the AAC course. We spent a full day on that stuff. And, really bringing that energy right through the screen, especially virtually now, is difficult. And so it was really good training. Finding something like that, I think, is super valuable for everybody. Even if you're not going to be public speaking as part of your career, just being able to communicate up and down the stack, right, to your coworkers. Hey, if you're passionate about a project, you should be able to put that passion out there, and that passion is what moves things forward in your career. Right, asking for the question, asking for the course, asking for the task, and then really being able to communicate why it's critical to the right people with the right words. I think it's something that is very, very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of funny, if you've done this long enough, you'll come up to some older lecterns and you'll feel the finger grips. They're there. You can actually see the dents.
There's that spot.
Yeah.
Frankie, we got some winners?
Yeah, so we got some winners. I did take note of all the participants. And yeah, so we have Steve Washburn, number 1. So yeah, I'll hit you up individually here and I'll ask for your contact info. And then number 2 was Joshua Solomon. So yeah, so same thing. Yeah, and then we do have, I wanted to announce, we do have, we are planning a VBeers, a virtual VBeers. I believe that's in 12 days, I believe. So yeah, so we'll put it up on our page on our community site so people can join us. And then yeah, one thing that I want to get started. So Brian Heck, for those that don't know, he's a fellow VMUG leader here for Seattle. We'd like to I'd like to incorporate what you were talking about the whiteboard kind of thing, and the whiteboard / Toastmasters. In here, you know, even if it's every 2 weeks, every week, monthly, just to get a session going. You know, we don't have to talk about anything, specific. We can just get up there and let you do your thing, and just to help you out. You know, we want for everybody here in the audience and in the community, we definitely want to help you advance your career. You know, how Patrick was saying, it just it will help you get ahead. So I'm super shy. I shake? Do my hands shake when I gotta talk in public? But it's something you gotta get. You gotta get past it. And believe me, it's fun once you're in it. And don't be like me. I ended up talking a lot. So, but yeah. So we'll send out
a practice thing.
Yeah.
So Frankie, like that. Thanks for that segue there. And sorry guys, I've been MIA for quite a while on the VMUG stuff, trying to get back involved, and Frankie's just been crushing it. So super grateful for him. But the thought was to get like a Toastmasters for our side, right? And where we can have just short stuff, like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. All right, Dave Allenbach, give me 2 minutes on vSphere networking. And just riff on that, and then in a steel sharpened steel mentality, get good positive feedback from your peers, and just that through that repetition and that practice, I think it'd be. If that sounds interesting, let us know in the Seattle VMUG Slack or through the VMUG website. And right after this call, Frankie and I have the UserCon kickoff meeting. And so please, right now, if you have an opportunity, what content would you like out of the UserCon? Toss it in chat or jump in here. Let us know right now, because we're getting ready to go into the kickoff, our first call on February 25. Is that right, Frankie?
Yes, the day after my birthday. Yes. Yeah.
I threw this link, Pechakucha or Pechakacha, into the chat. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a thing that I first heard of at VMware, and it's an awesome way to write a presentation. A Pechakucha is 20 slides of 20 seconds each. And if you're doing it correctly, it auto advances, right? So you put a picture up and you talk to the picture for 20 seconds. And it's a great way to just get a short, coherent, focused message out It's a lot easier than trying to say, oh my God, I got to take on a 50-slide presentation. And, we do them at various VMware events, and people don't even present on tech, right? Some of the best Pechakuchas I've seen have been, I saw one on gardening, which is not really my thing, but it was an amazing presentation because they love it. This person loved gardening. I had a Pechakucha from somebody who literally they loved green. The whole presentation was on her love of the color green, and it was engaging, right? So just a different vehicle if you want to consider it.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. That's awesome. Yeah, Chris McCain, I'm sure you guys have seen him on Twitter and stuff. He presented at the VMUG Leaders Group a couple of years back. And that's one of the things he called out specifically on getting better at speaking publicly is talk about things right? Talk about things you're passionate about, because that really comes through. And then it gets easier and easier to just grab, like what Patrick shows here, a picture and just be able to talk about the picture. I think it's critical. So please, in Slack or in chat here, while we got a few more minutes, any content you guys want, any suggestions, right? It's your user con. We're just riding herd on it. So please get what you want out of the story.
Definitely too. I want to add to that. Please, we want community events. No joke. It doesn't have to be a long event. A speaking engagement, a presentation. Make it short. Whatever you want. We want to help you shine. Trust me. Submit those talks.
Unless you're Christopher Boyd, nobody likes him.
I'm used to that. I'm okay with that.
All right. If anybody has any questions. Excellent. All right. Yeah. So we have, so anybody that's interested, want to reach out to me, reach out to the leaders, and we can get you the presentation, the slide deck. And yeah, definitely stay engaged. Let us know any feedback. Greatly appreciated. Thank you very much, Patrick. Yeah, we're about to deploy this. No joke. I just downloaded the OVA, and we're working on VNC on AWS right now. Yeah, we're gonna put it to the test. We're super excited. Yeah,
you know where to find me if you need help.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, and the recording. Yeah, we're recording right now. My editing skills aren't too great, but don't worry about that part. Yeah, so we're recording, and this will be up on YouTube. I'll try and put it out there by tomorrow. All right. Cool. Good. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.